Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars through the big window. His ship was called the UES Defiant, and it was one of the best ships humans had ever built. Jake had been flying through space for 15 years, and he loved his job. Today was different, though, because today they were going to look at a new solar system that no human had ever seen before. The year was 2387, and humans had just started to travel to other star systems. They had built small towns on planets around other stars, but Earth was still home to most people. Jake's job was to fly around and find new places where humans could live. He had a crew of 20 people who helped him explore space and look for planets that might be good for humans. Dr. Lisa Parker was sitting at her computer looking at data from the new solar system. She was the smartest person on the ship when it came to studying aliens and new planets. Lisa had short brown hair and green eyes that always seemed to be thinking about something important. She looked up at Jake and smiled. The ship's computer started making noise, and Jake walked over to see what was happening. His crew member Tony was looking at the screens with worry on his face. Tony pointed at the screen and said something was coming toward them from deep space. Jake looked at the readings and saw that whatever was coming was very big and moving very fast. Suddenly, the space around them filled with huge ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. Jake had never seen ships so big or so strange-looking. The alien ships were black and silver, and they had sharp edges like knives. There were hundreds of them, and they surrounded Jake's small ship completely. Jake told his crew to stay calm, but inside he was very scared. A voice came through the ship's radio, but it was not a human voice. The voice was deep and cold, and it spoke in perfect English, which surprised everyone. The alien said his name was Admiral Vextar, and he was from something called the Zephyrian Empire. The alien told Jake that his ship should not move or they would destroy it. Jake looked at Lisa, and she looked back at him with fear in her eyes. None of them had ever met aliens before, and they did not know what to expect. The alien voice spoke again and said that all humans must listen to an important message. Jake told his crew to record everything the alien said so they could send it back to Earth. Admiral Vextar began to speak, and his words made Jake's heart sink. The alien said that the Zephyrian Empire had ruled this part of space for 3,000 years. He said they had conquered over 200 different alien races, and now it was time for humans to surrender too. The alien gave humans 72 hours to give up all their planets and space stations except for Earth's moon. If humans did not surrender, then every human in space would be killed. To show how powerful they were, the Zephyrians destroyed a human research station that was studying rocks in space. Jake watched in horror as the big station was turned into dust by one shot from an alien weapon. The station had no people on it, but it was still scary to see how easily the aliens could destroy human buildings. After the alien ships left, Jake immediately sent a message to Earth telling them what had happened. The message would take several hours to reach Earth because space is very big. Jake felt helpless knowing that the fate of all humans was now in the hands of people back home. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Parker's message reached President Elena Rodriguez, who was the leader of all humans. President Rodriguez was a strong woman who had been chosen to lead Earth because she never gave up when things got hard. She called together all the important leaders from around the world to discuss what to do about the alien threat. The meeting room was full of worried faces as President Rodriguez played the recording of Admiral Vextar's message. Some of the leaders said humans should surrender because fighting the aliens would mean everyone would die. Other leaders said humans should try to negotiate with the aliens and find a peaceful solution. Dr. Lisa Parker, who was an expert on alien life forms, studied all the information they had received from the Zephyrian ships. She discovered that the aliens had given the same ultimatum to every race they had conquered. Every single alien race had chosen to surrender rather than fight. The Zephyrians expected humans to do the same thing because that was what always happened. President Rodriguez listened to all the advice from her advisors, but in her heart she already knew what she had to do. She had grown up reading stories about humans who fought against impossible odds to protect their freedom. Her grandfather had told her stories about brave people who chose to fight even when they knew they might lose. When it came time to send a reply to the aliens, President Rodriguez stood up and spoke in a clear, strong voice. She said that humans had worked too hard to build their civilization to give it up now. She said that humans would rather die fighting than live as slaves to the aliens. Her final words became famous across the galaxy. She said humanity bows to no one and they choose fire over chains. The message was sent to Admiral Vextar, who was waiting in his huge ship far from Earth. When the alien received the human reply, he was confused and surprised. In 3,000 years of conquering other races, no species had ever chosen to fight instead of surrender. The Admiral did not understand why humans would choose death over slavery. Admiral Vextar called his officers together and told them to prepare for war. He had conquered many worlds before, but this was the first time he felt uncertain about the outcome. There was something different about humans that made him worried, even though his ships were much more powerful than anything humans had. Back on Earth, President Rodriguez began preparing for the biggest war in human history. She knew that humans had almost no chance of winning, but she also knew that some things were worth fighting for even if you could not win. Freedom was one of those things. As she looked up at the stars, she whispered that the aliens wanted surrender, but humans would give them fire instead. The alien war fleet was massive and scary to look at. 500 huge ships moved through space toward Earth like a swarm of giant metal insects. Each Zephyrian ship was 10 times bigger than the largest human ship, and their weapons could destroy entire cities with one shot. Admiral Vextar sat in his command chair and felt confident that this war would be over quickly. Commander Ryan Stone was in charge of the human space fleet, and he knew his job was almost impossible. Humans only had 50 ships that could fight, and most of them were built for exploring space, not for war. Ryan was a tall man with gray hair who had spent his whole life in the military. He had fought in small wars between human colonies, but nothing had prepared him for this. The human ships met the alien fleet near Jupiter, which was the biggest planet in Earth's solar system. Ryan had chosen this place to fight because Jupiter had many moons and lots of radiation that might help hide human ships from alien sensors. He also knew that the gas giant's gravity was very strong and might cause problems for ships that did not know how to use it. Dr. Alan Brooks was the chief engineer on Ryan's ship called the UES Liberty. Alan was a short man with thick glasses who loved to build things and solve problems. When he first saw the alien ships, he was amazed by their technology, but he was also looking for weaknesses. Alan believed that every machine had flaws if you looked hard enough. The first battle began when the alien ships tried to fly straight toward Earth in a neat formation. This was how the Zephyrians always fought because their ships were so powerful. They never needed to be clever. Ryan ordered his ships to split up and hide behind Jupiter's moons instead of fighting the aliens directly. The Zephyrian weapons were incredibly powerful, but they could not hit targets that were hiding behind solid rock. Ryan's ships would fly out from behind a moon chute at the aliens and then quickly hide again before the aliens could shoot back. This made Admiral Vextar angry because he was used to enemies that stood still and fought like gentlemen. Alan Brooks spent days studying recordings of Zephyrian weapons and shields. He noticed that the alien shields worked by creating an energy field around their ships that could stop almost any attack. But Alan was very smart, and he found something strange. When he looked very carefully at the shield energy, he saw that it flickered sometimes like a light that was about to burn out. Working with just spare parts and tools he found around the ship, Alan built a new kind of weapon. Instead of trying to break through the alien shields with brute force, his weapon sent out many different energy signals very quickly. The signals confused the alien shields and made them unstable. It was like trying to listen to many radio stations at the same time. The first time humans used Alan's new weapon was during a battle near Europa, which was one of Jupiter's moons. A human ship called the UES Courage flew straight at a Zephyrian ship and fired the frequency weapon. The alien shield started to flicker and shake, and then they failed completely. The human ship's regular weapons were then able to damage the alien ship badly. Admiral Vextar could not believe what he was seeing. His ships had shields that were supposed to be perfect, and no primitive race had ever found a way to break them. But humans had done something impossible and destroyed one of his most powerful ships. The Admiral felt worried for the first time in many years. Ryan Stone saw that Alan's weapon worked, and he quickly had his engineers build more of them. The human ships also started using new tactics that the aliens had never seen before. Instead of flying in straight lines like civilized warriors, the humans flew in crazy patterns and used Jupiter's gravity to speed up and slow down in ways that confused the alien gunners. Captain Kelly Murphy was the pilot of a small human fighter ship, and she was one of the best pilots in the fleet. During one battle, she flew her ship directly into Jupiter's atmosphere, where the thick gases and lightning made it impossible for alien sensors to track her. She then flew back out and attacked an alien ship from underneath where they did not expect it. The aliens started to realize that humans fought very differently from other races they had conquered. Most species would line up their ships and fight, in an organized way that made sense. Humans seemed to enjoy chaos, and they used every trick they could think of to win fights, even when they were outnumbered. During the battle near Io, which was another moon of Jupiter, the humans used their most daring tactic yet. Lieutenant Ben Carter volunteered to fly his ship directly at an alien ship and crash into it. This was called a suicide attack, and most civilized races thought it was barbaric. But Ben's sacrifice destroyed a massive alien ship and saved many human lives. Alan Brooks kept working on new weapons, and he developed something he called ghost technology. This allowed human ships to briefly disappear from normal space and reappear somewhere else. The aliens could not understand how human ships could vanish and then attack from a completely different direction. Admiral Vextar sent a message to the Zephyrian High Council telling them that the war with humans was not going as planned. He reported that humans did not fight like any other species in the galaxy. They seemed to prefer sneaky attacks and desperate moves over honorable combat. The Admiral requested more ships because he was starting to lose vessels to human tricks. The High Council was surprised to hear that any primitive race could cause problems for their mighty fleet. They had conquered over 200 different alien species, and none of them had ever destroyed even one Zephyrian ship. But humans had already destroyed 12 ships and showed no signs of giving up. Ryan Stone realized that his strategy was working better than he had hoped. The aliens were powerful, but they were also predictable. They expected their enemies to fight in the same way they did with big ships shooting at each other, until one side was completely destroyed. Humans refused to play by those rules. After 2 weeks of fighting near Jupiter, the human fleet had lost only 3 ships while destroying 12 alien vessels. This was an incredible victory, considering how much more advanced the alien technology was. News of the human success was sent to all human colonies and gave people hope that maybe they could win this war. But Ryan knew that this was just the beginning. The aliens had hundreds more ships, and they would learn from their mistakes. Admiral Vexatar was already changing his tactics and trying to predict where human ships would attack next. The real test would come when the aliens stopped underestimating human creativity and started taking the war seriously. Alan Brooks continued working on new inventions because he knew that human survival depended on staying ahead of the aliens. He was developing weapons that could shoot through solid matter and ships that could repair themselves during battle. Every day brought new challenges, but Alan loved solving impossible problems. The war was far from over, but humans had proven something important. They had shown that advanced technology was not everything in a fight. Sometimes courage and cleverness could defeat superior weapons. The aliens had wanted human surrender, but instead they got human fire, and that fire was burning brighter than anyone had expected. News of the human victory near Jupiter spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. The Zephyrian Empire controlled all communication between star systems, but some messages still got through on hidden networks that conquered races had built in secret. For the first time in 3,000 years, other alien species heard that someone had fought the Zephyrians and won. Captain Maria Santos was chosen to lead a secret mission to the Procyon star system. Maria was a brave woman, with black hair and dark eyes, who spoke several alien languages. Her job was to make contact with alien races that the Zephyrians had conquered and tell them that humans were willing to help them fight for freedom. The Procyon system was home to a race called the Felinar, who looked like giant cats that walked on 2 legs. They had been conquered by the Zephyrians 400 years ago and had been forced to work in mines digging up rare metals. The Felinar were proud warriors before the conquest, but generations of slavery had made them forget how to fight. Maria's ship was very small and used Alan Brooks's new ghost technology to avoid Zephyrian patrols. She landed on Procyon 3 in the middle of the night and made her way to a Felinar mining camp. The cat people were surprised to see a human because they had been told that all free races in the galaxy had been conquered. The leader of the Felinar workers was an old warrior named Keth, who still remembered the days when his people were free. Keth had scars on his fur from many battles, and his yellow eyes burned with anger when he talked about the Zephyrians. He listened carefully as Maria told him about the human victory and the new weapons that could break Zephyrian shields. Maria gave Keth detailed plans for building frequency weapons and taught him the tactics that Commander Stone had used near Jupiter. She also brought medicine and food for the Felinar workers who had been poorly treated by their alien masters. Most importantly, she brought something the Felinar had not felt in centuries, which was hope. Within days of Maria's visit, the Felinar began their first rebellion in 400 years. They used the frequency weapons to destroy Zephyrian guard posts and freed thousands of workers from the mining camps. The cat people were natural fighters, and once they remembered how to fight, they became very dangerous enemies. Back on Earth, Dr. Alan Brooks was working on his most ambitious project yet. He was building ships that he called ghost ships, which could completely disappear from normal space for several minutes at a time. These ships could fly through solid matter and appear inside enemy formations without warning. The technology was very dangerous, and sometimes the ships never came back from the other dimension. Alan also developed new weapons called kinetic harpoons, which were basically very fast pieces of metal that could punch through anything. The harpoons did not use energy, so they could bypass Zephyrian shields completely. They were simple weapons, but they were very effective against the complex alien technology. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen was put in charge of spreading the human message to other conquered races. Amy was a small woman with short hair who was an expert at sneaking into places where she was not supposed to be. She led a team of human agents who traveled to different star systems, carrying weapons and information to alien resistance groups. The Saurians in the Vega system were reptile people who had been conquered 300 years ago. They were forced to build ships for the Zephyrian fleet in huge factories that floated in space. When Amy's team reached them with news of human resistance, the Saurians immediately began sabotaging the ships they were building. Amy's message to the Saurians was simple but powerful. She told them that humans had chosen to fight instead of surrender, and that they were willing to share their weapons with anyone who wanted freedom. She said that together the oppressed races of the galaxy could defeat the Zephyrian Empire if they worked as a team. The crystalline Vorthak species lived in the Alpha Centauri system and had remained neutral for thousands of years. They were made of living crystal and could survive in the vacuum of space without ships. The Vorthak had watched many races get conquered by the Zephyrians but had never interfered because they believed war was wasteful. When human agents reached the Vorthak homeworld, they found a very different reception. The crystal beings were curious about human determination and wanted to understand why humans would choose death over slavery. The Vorthak leader was an ancient being called the Prime Crystal, who had lived for over 10,000 years. The Prime Crystal asked the human agents to explain why freedom was worth dying for when living as a slave would allow their species to survive. The humans told stories of human history and explained that some things were more important than just staying alive. They said that without freedom, life was not worth living. Admiral Vexitar was becoming very frustrated as reports came in from across the galaxy. 3 different alien races had started rebellions, and Zephyrian supply lines were being attacked constantly. The Admiral had never faced anything like this before because conquered races usually stayed conquered for thousands of years. The Zephyrian High Council was also worried because they were facing their first multi-species war. They had always conquered one race at a time and then used those conquered races to help conquer others. Now several races were working together against them and sharing weapons and tactics. Amy Chen led her most daring mission when she broke into a major Zephyrian communications center. The facility was heavily guarded, but Amy's team used human stealth technology to get inside without being detected. Once inside, they took control of the communication array and broadcast a message to dozens of star systems at once. The message was recorded by President Rodriguez herself, and it was translated into over 50 alien languages. The president spoke directly to the oppressed peoples of the galaxy and told them that Earth stood ready to help anyone who wanted to fight for freedom. She said that humans believed every intelligent being had the right to choose their own destiny. The broadcast caused chaos across the Zephyrian Empire, as millions of enslaved aliens heard the human message. Many species that had been conquered centuries ago began to remember what freedom felt like. Some started small acts of rebellion, while others began planning larger uprisings. The insect-like Clixon race in the Tau Ceti system had been used as living computers by the Zephyrians for over 800 years. Their incredible intelligence made them perfect for calculating hyperspace jumps and managing complex systems. When they heard the human message, they began introducing small errors into their calculations that caused Zephyrian ships to arrive at the wrong destinations. Alan Brooks received reports from across the galaxy about how his weapons were being used by different alien species. Each race modified the designs to work with their own technology and fighting styles. The Felinar made the weapons smaller so they could hide them easily. The Saurians made them more powerful, but less accurate because they preferred direct assaults. Commander Stone realized that humans had accidentally started something much bigger than a simple war for survival. They had created a galactic revolution that was spreading faster than anyone could control. The human example of defiance had inspired dozens of species to rediscover their courage and fight back against their oppressors. The Zephyrian Empire found itself fighting on multiple fronts for the first time in its 3,000-year history. Admiral Vextar requested reinforcements from the home fleet, but even more ships would not be enough if every conquered race decided to rebel at once. The empire that had seemed invincible was beginning to crack under pressure. Maria Santos established communication networks between the different rebel groups so they could coordinate their attacks. She became known across the galaxy as the human who brought fire to the oppressed. Her name was spoken in dozens of alien languages as a symbol of hope and resistance. The fire that humans had chosen instead of surrender was now burning across the galaxy and lighting up star systems that had been dark with oppression for centuries. The Zephyrians had wanted easy conquest, but instead they got the biggest war in galactic history. The Zephyrian High Council was meeting in their great palace on the homeworld, and the mood was very dark. For the first time in 3,000 years, their empire was losing control of multiple star systems. High Counselor Mordak was the most powerful Zephyrian alive, and he was furious that primitive humans had caused so much trouble. Mordak decided that the rebels needed to see what happened to those who defied the Empire. He authorized the use of planet-killer weapons, which were massive devices that could destroy entire worlds by making their cores explode. The High Counselor chose the human colony of New Boston in the Wolf 359 system as his target, because it had over 2 million people living there. Admiral Vextar was ordered to lead a fleet of 100 ships to New Boston and demonstrate Zephyrian power by destroying the planet. Vextar did not like killing innocent people, but he followed orders because that was what good soldiers did. He hoped that destroying one human world would make the other rebels surrender and end this costly war. New Boston was a beautiful planet, with blue oceans and green forests that reminded humans of Earth. The colonists had built cities that blended with the natural landscape and farms that fed millions of people. Children played in parks while adults worked in factories and schools. None of them knew that death was coming from the stars. Commander Ryan Stone had been promoted to admiral after his victories near Jupiter, and now he commanded all human military forces. When he learned about the Zephyrian fleet heading toward New Boston, he knew this would be the most important battle of the war. If the aliens destroyed a human world, it would break the spirit of the rebellion. Ryan gathered every ship he could find to defend New Boston. The human fleet now included ships from the Felinar Saurian and several other alien races that had joined the fight for freedom. It was the first time in galactic history that so many different species had worked together as equals in battle. Dr. Alan Brooks had been working on his most dangerous invention yet. He called it the Phoenix device, and it could turn a ship's power core into a massive bomb that would destroy everything within a large area. The device was meant to be used as a last resort when a ship was about to be captured or destroyed anyway. The battle for New Boston began when Admiral Vexitar's fleet dropped out of hyperspace and found themselves facing an alliance armada of over 300 ships. Vextar was surprised to see so many different alien species fighting together, because the Zephyrian Empire had always kept conquered races separated from each other. Lieutenant Ben Carter was now one of the best human pilots in the fleet, and he led a squadron of fighters against the massive Zephyrian ships. Ben had learned to use asteroid fields and space debris as cover while attacking much larger targets. His tactics had been copied by pilots from other species who admired human creativity. The space around New Boston became a massive battlefield, with ships from dozens of different worlds fighting for their freedom. The Felinar ships were fast and used hit-and-run tactics they had learned from humans. The Saurian vessels were heavily armored and designed for direct assaults on enemy positions. Captain Kelly Murphy had volunteered to test Alan Brooks's Phoenix device in actual combat. Her ship was badly damaged during the first day of fighting, and she was surrounded by 3 Zephyrian cruisers. Instead of surrendering, Kelly activated the Phoenix device and rammed her ship into the largest enemy vessel. The explosion from Kelly's sacrifice destroyed all 4 ships and created a brilliant flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. Her final message to the fleet was that humans never give up and never surrender. Kelly became a hero to species across the galaxy who heard the story of her brave death. The battle continued for 6 days with neither side able to gain a clear advantage. The Alliance ships used every trick they had learned from human tactics, while the Zephyrians relied on their superior technology and firepower. Thousands of beings died on both sides as the fighting grew more desperate. On the 4th day of battle, the crystalline Vorthak arrived with a fleet of ships made from living crystal. The Vorthak had finally decided that the Zephyrian Empire needed to be stopped, and their crystal ships were immune to energy weapons. The aliens had never faced enemies they could not hurt with their most powerful guns. The tide of battle turned when Vorthak crystal ships began ramming Zephyrian vessels and tearing them apart with their razor-sharp edges. The ancient crystal beings fought with a fury that surprised everyone because they had been peaceful for thousands of years. They said that humans had taught them that some things were worth fighting for. Admiral Vextar watched his fleet being destroyed by an alliance of species that should have been enemies of each other. He realized that humans had done something no other race had ever accomplished. They had united the oppressed peoples of the galaxy against a common foe and turned weakness into strength through cooperation. Alan Brooks had been working on another breakthrough during the battle, and he successfully tested ships that could repair themselves using nanotechnology. These resurrection ships could rebuild themselves even after taking massive damage and return to battle stronger than before. The technology seemed almost magical to aliens who had never seen anything like it. Captain Maria Santos commanded one of the new resurrection ships, and she used it to attack the Zephyrian flagship, where Admiral Vextar was directing the battle. Her ship was destroyed 3 times during the assault, but each time it rebuilt itself and continued fighting. The sight of a ship that refused to stay dead terrified the Zephyrian crew. By the 6th day of battle, Admiral Vexitar had lost over 60 ships, while the Alliance fleet was actually growing stronger as more rebel ships arrived from across the galaxy. The Admiral realized that he could not win this fight, and that destroying New Boston would not end the rebellion. It would only make the rebels more determined to fight. Admiral Vextar made a decision that shocked his own officers. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat without destroying New Boston. The Admiral had begun to respect human courage, and he did not want to massacre innocent civilians just to make a political point. Some of his officers called him a traitor, but Vexitar said there was no honor in killing defenseless people. The victory at New Boston was celebrated across the galaxy as proof that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated. News of the battle spread to every conquered world and inspired even more species to join the rebellion. The Alliance now controlled over 30 star systems and was growing stronger every day. High Counselor Mordak was furious when he learned that Admiral Vextar had retreated without completing his mission. The High Counselor stripped Vextar of his rank and ordered his arrest for treason. But many other Zephyrian officers secretly agreed with Vextar that the war had gone too far. President Rodriguez addressed the galaxy after the victory, and her words were translated into hundreds of alien languages. She said that the Battle of New Boston proved that free peoples fighting together were stronger than any empire built on fear and oppression. She invited all enslaved races to join the growing alliance for freedom. The fire that humans had chosen, instead of surrender, was now burning across half the galaxy, and it showed no signs of being put out. The Zephyrian Empire was discovering that ruling through fear only worked until someone was brave enough to fight back. Once that happened, fear could turn into a weapon against the oppressors themselves. 2 years had passed since the Great Battle at New Boston, and the galaxy looked very different now. The Galactic Liberation Alliance controlled over 80 star systems and included more than 50 different alien species. President Elena Rodriguez had become the supreme commander of the largest military force in galactic history. The Alliance had grown so powerful that they were now ready to attack the Zephyrian homeworld itself. Admiral Ryan Stone commanded a massive fleet of ships built using technology from dozens of different races. Human engineering had been combined with Felinar speed Saurian armor and Vorthak crystal weapons to create vessels more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Alan Brooks had perfected his resurrection technology and created ships that could literally rebuild themselves from scattered debris. The new ships used quantum reconstruction and nanotechnology that seemed like magic to most people. These vessels embodied the human spirit of never giving up no matter how badly they were damaged. The flagship of the Alliance fleet was called the UES Phoenix, and it was the most powerful warship ever built. Admiral Stone stood on its bridge and looked at the readings that showed thousands of Allied ships from across the galaxy. Humans had started this war with only 50 ships, but now they led an armada that filled entire solar systems. Captain Maria Santos had been promoted to command the Phoenix's sister ship, which was called the Liberator. Maria had become famous across the galaxy as the human who brought hope to enslaved worlds. Songs were sung about her in alien languages on planets that had never seen a human before her arrival. The target of their attack was Zephyros Prime, which was the homeworld of the Zephyrian Empire. The planet was heavily defended with orbital weapons platforms and a fleet of over 200 of the most advanced Zephyrian ships. High Counselor Mordek had sworn to destroy his own world rather than let it fall to rebels. Admiral Vextar was no longer serving in the Zephyrian military after his refusal to destroy New Boston. He had been imprisoned for treason, but many Zephyrian officers secretly supported his actions. A growing number of Zephyrians believed that their empire had become too cruel and needed to change. The final assault on Zephyros Prime began when the Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Admiral Stone had learned from human military history that the key to victory was not just having better weapons, but also having soldiers who believed in what they were fighting for. His crews included beings from dozens of worlds who all shared the dream of freedom. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Chen led the ground assault teams that would capture key installations on the planet's surface. Amy had become an expert at coordinating attacks between different alien species who had very different fighting styles. She had learned to speak 17 alien languages and understood the military traditions of each race in the Alliance. The space battle above Zephyros Prime was the largest in galactic history, with over 3,000 ships fighting in an area the size of a solar system. The Alliance ships used tactics that combined human creativity with alien technology and natural abilities. No single species could have won this fight alone, but together they were unstoppable. High Counselor Mordak commanded the Zephyrian defense from his fortress deep underground on the planet's surface. He had activated the planet's core destabilization device, which would cause the world to explode if it looked like the Alliance was going to win. Mordak preferred to destroy everything rather than admit defeat. Captain Kelly Murphy had survived her earlier Phoenix device mission thanks to new rescue technology, and she now commanded a squadron of the most advanced fighter craft in the Alliance fleet. Her pilots included humans, Felinar Saurians, and even some young Zephyrians who had joined the rebellion against their own government. The battle turned when Admiral Vextar led a group of Zephyrian officers in a mutiny against High Counselor Morduk. Vextar had escaped from prison with help from other officers who believed the war had gone too far. They seized control of several Zephyrian ships and began fighting alongside the Alliance fleet. Admiral Stone was surprised to receive a communication from his former enemy asking for permission to join the battle against Mordak. Vextar explained that many Zephyrians wanted peace and were tired of ruling through fear and violence. The Admiral agreed to accept Zephyrian help because he believed former enemies could become allies. Dr. Alan Brooks had developed his most incredible invention yet, which was a device that could stop a planet from exploding even after the core destabilization process had begun. The technology required enormous amounts of energy, and a ship would have to fly directly into the planet's core to deploy it. It was almost certainly a suicide mission. Captain Santos volunteered to fly the mission to save Zephyros Prime, even though it meant she would probably die in the attempt. She piloted her ship through the planet's crust, while Alliance and Rebel Zephyrian ships fought desperately to protect her. The heat and pressure were so intense that her ship's hull began to melt. At the last possible moment, Santos deployed the core stabilization device and activated her ship's emergency resurrection system. The quantum technology managed to reconstruct her ship and crew just as the planet's core explosion was stopped. It was the most amazing rescue in galactic history and proved that human technology had advanced beyond what anyone thought possible. High Counselor Mordak was captured by Amy, Chen's ground forces, just as he was trying to activate a backup destruction system. The Mad Zephyrian leader ranted that he would rather see the galaxy burn than allow inferior races to rule themselves. Amy quietly told him that the age of empires built on fear was ending, and a new era of cooperation was beginning. Admiral Vextar met with Admiral Stone aboard the Phoenix to discuss terms for ending the war. The two former enemies had developed respect for each other during their years of fighting. Vextar admitted that humans had taught the galaxy something important about the value of freedom and the power of working together. The war officially ended when a new galactic republic was established with representatives from every free world. The republic was based on the human ideas of democracy and equal rights for all intelligent beings. Former Zephyrian worlds were invited to join as equal members rather than being conquered in return. President Rodriguez gave the final speech of the war to delegates from across the galaxy. She stood before beings of dozens of different species and reminded them that they had all chosen to fight for freedom when it would have been easier to surrender. She said that the fire of liberty would continue to burn in their hearts as they explored the unknown regions beyond the galaxy. The new republic organized exploration missions to other galaxies where they might find new, intelligent species. Human ships led these expeditions, carrying the message that freedom was worth fighting for, and that cooperation was stronger than conquest. They were ready to face whatever challenges waited among the distant stars. Admiral Stone kept one of Admiral Vextar's quotes in his personal log as a reminder of what they had accomplished. The former Zephyrian had said that humans were the first species in galactic history to choose fire over chains, and that fire had lit up the darkness of oppression that had covered the stars for thousands of years. The galaxy was free, and it would stay free as long as beings remembered the lesson that humans had taught them. Sometimes the greatest victory was not in winning a war, but in inspiring others to believe that they could win their own battles for dignity and freedom. The fire of human defiance had become a beacon of hope that would shine across the universe forever. Years later, when children of many species asked their parents about the Great War, they were told the same story. The Zephyrians had demanded surrender from humanity, but humans had chosen to give them fire instead. That fire had burned away the darkness of slavery and lit the path to a better future for every thinking being in the galaxy.